I was wondering lately about the implications of a Let's Play being an expressionist piece. Like, are you basically overwriting someone else's expression with your own? And I think you can simultaneously express your own views and enhance someone else's, or bring to light points that someone may not have considered about someone else's work. But I think there's also a kind of beauty in the way that even things that we don't intend to be expressionist come across that way. I'm not sure there's actually a single work that isn't technically expressionist, because we always put pieces of ourselves into things we create, even accidentally. And I think there's value in seeing that, in seeing the expression inside work that seemingly doesn't have any. I think it's worth trying to see things from other people's perspectives, and I try to actively seek out other perspectives. But a big part of seeking out other people's perspectives that's less pleasant to most is questioning their perspectives, asking questions about what they feel and what they think. But if you don't understand something, I think it's only natural to ask about it, and I think scorning people for asking about something probably isn't the best way to spread information. It's probably a good way to spread and encourage ignorance. Like, let's say I were ignorant about a particular topic. Someone said I was ignorant, and I decided to delve into the how and why, so that way, I might better understand why what I was doing is ignorant, and how I could improve, or if what I was doing was even ignorant at all, because asking questions is an important part of figuring out who we are and what we should do with our lives. But there's this weird thing with socially ostracizing and punishing people for asking questions when they face claims of being ignorant. If someone's asking you questions when you call them ignorant, that's probably because they want to know what perspective you have that they don't. So that way, they can build their own beliefs around that. Perspectives are a kind of information, and if you're denying them your perspective because you think it's something they should already understand, then you're actively encouraging the same ignorance that you're accusing them of. It's just kind of a weird cycle. I don't consider myself incredibly optimistic when it comes to human communication, but I like to think we can do better than that. And if it's not worth the personal emotional investment to get involved in a conversation about why you think someone is ignorant, that's perfectly fine. You can just, say that. Instead of, making it sound like they're stupid for asking questions about something they don't understand. That is how one learns, is by asking questions. But I've yet to find a way to ask for more of people's perspectives that doesn't piss off normal people, which I find to be incredibly difficult. Like, no matter how politely you ask, can I please hear more about this? I want to know more about your perspective so I can better understand, and I can balance my own viewpoint with yours. No matter how you word that, people are going to take it offensively. Not everyone will, but a lot of people will. And it's something I struggle a lot with in general in life, is that, instead of turtle up and stick to my own beliefs 100% of the time and refusing to acknowledge any perspectives that aren't my own, I actively want to see other people's perspectives. But whenever I ask or, tell them I'd like to hear more, people seem to take that as like a bad thing. Like I should just magically have exactly their perspective, as though I live in their exact position and believe and feel the exact same things they do. It's this weird gulf between humans that I've never been able to fully close, no matter how hard I try. And at some point, you just kind of learn you can't try with most people. You have to find a very specific set of people willing to devote that kind of time and energy to do a back and forth where you question each other's perspectives and learn more from each other. And I think I found a reasonable set of people in life I can do that with, people who I challenge the perspectives of and people who challenge my perspectives. Not just people who watch this channel, but, people in general in my life. But I sometimes wonder and worry if other people have that. Because that's an important part of growing as a person, is having people around you who question you, and having people around you that you can question, so you'll learn more about other people in the world, about other perspectives, about different ways to see reality. Like, no one in the world sees things exactly the same way as another person sees them. All of the billions of people on the planet have a different way of seeing shit. And you know, that's kind of terrifying, but at the same time, I think it's admirable to try and understand as many perspectives as possible. For example, I have a very different idea of punk than most people do. I see punk as a kind of strange rebellion. Not just, you know, a rebellion with a specific cause in mind or anything like that, but just rebellion in general. Rebellion using one's self. And I end up calling a lot of things punk that a lot of people don't consider to be punk. Because punk is associated with specific art styles and identities and ideas. But I think punk is about challenging those art styles and identities and ideas. And you know, I would actually consider myself kind of a punk in that sense. Because one of the things I like to do is be so dull and sensible about some topics that it actively frustrates people. As I found out through multiple encounters on the internet, it is possible to just be so unbelievably neutral about a topic that it actively irritates people, to the point that you trying to be diplomatic about the situation bothers them even more than being an asshole about it. And I think there's a special kind of punk in sticking to your guns even when you realize that. Like, you know, why should I either have to be an asshole or agree? I realize that would make things easier for you if I was just an asshole back, or if I just agreed with you to stop the conversation, or if I just didn't reply at all. But instead, I'm going to keep trying to be reasonable even though you have no interest in that, because for some reason trying to be reasonable is upsetting you. And that's what I'm rebelling against, is the idea that being reasonable is somehow upsetting. It's kind of flattering, really, when myself or anyone else is able to upset someone that way, because that's a special kind of way to bother someone. You know, if you say something intentionally inflammatory or stupid, or if you have an incredibly controversial opinion, that's an easy way to bother someone, an easy way to rebel. But irritating people by trying to be reasonable, even if you fail, irritating people by trying to be reasonable and neutral, and keeping a neutral tone, that's special. Because it's really humorous to me for people to put so much weight in words that are intended to have as little weight behind them as possible. Like, you go out of your way to carefully construct this sentence, paragraph, argument, essay, in as neutral a tone as you possibly can, and someone puts so much weight on those words that it irritates them. I personally think that's both flattering and horrifying, but I choose to mostly stick with the former, because it's not my responsibility to keep your emotions in check, and I personally find it very, very flattering that you chose me to get upset over out of all the people you could have gotten upset over with actually aggressive beliefs. And a part of the beauty in having a channel this small, viewer base this small and personal, is that I can do weird shit like this. I can play Gun Club while I talk straight stream of consciousness for 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Because that's just how I am. Most people watching my videos are probably used to that by now. They're used to this weird shit. But I think there's value in videos like this, not just because I personally enjoy making them, but because anyone actually watching and listening to this is understanding more about a way to view the world. You know? The stuff I talk about probably isn't stuff most people talk about in polite conversation or think so much about in front of others, much less posted on YouTube. But I'm not a normal person by any means, and you know, life is short, and I value life, and I value people, and I'm not gonna spend my life, you know, what I have of it, doing things I don't enjoy or care about. I don't have the arrogance or audacity to believe that what I'm saying holds any more weight than what anyone else could say about something. But at the same time, I think that it's worth saying it, because it's a potential way to see the world, and we need to see the world through as many eyes as we can if we want to understand each other. After all, most conflict is born from misunderstanding, or from adequate understanding but disagreement about how to handle that understanding. We're going to talk about Astro Boy next time, by the way. In case you thought this was a one-time thing, no, this is one of those weird Let's Plays where the first video is normal and then the rest of them are weird stream of consciousness heavy topics. And I talk about these things because I actively trust the people who watch my videos to think about them and form their own opinions and beliefs and share their opinions and beliefs with me. That's valuable to me, is hearing what other people think and say. Like, I obviously don't personally know every single person who watches my videos, but a few fair of the people that comment seem like very sensible and kind people who generally write a really detailed and informative posts, and whenever they disagree about something, they do so amicably, they do so with sensibility and understanding in mind. And that's a lot of the fun. Most of the fun, actually, is reading and responding to those comments. You know, the best part of this for me is not the, you know, it's kind of a tie. I'm not sure if the best part is sharing things I like, or is, you know, no, I'm gonna go ahead and say the best part of this whole thing is hearing what other people think about the things I share. That's definitely my favorite part of doing this. That being said, you know, I would still make these, even if people didn't have anything to say. It would make me a little less engaged, but I would still make these, because I would hope that one day someone would have something to say about the things I want to share. You know? I made these before people talked about them, and if people stop talking about them, I'll make them after, too, because it's something I enjoy doing. Conversation is the most fun part, but I would still do it anyway. The entirety of human discussion just seems really surreal to me. There's just so little way of knowing what anyone else truly thinks until they start yelling at you. So, you know, I just generally try to assume that people are saying what they mean. Unless they're, you know, trying to be humorous or sarcastic. Because, you know, that's a valuable tool for communication, is humor and sarcasm. But I generally try to assume that people are saying what they mean to say. It's the 2003 reboot, by the way. We're going to talk about the 2003 Astro Boy. The original Astro Boy didn't age so well, you know. The 2009 reboot is its own thing that deserves to be discussed way separately as its own work. The 2003 reboot, probably what I would consider the definitive version of Astro Boy, because it's the most fully realized. But yeah, that's fun, right? It even got a video game, so we can talk about that too. You know, it actually used to hurt a little bit when people, This just came up, by the way, because of what we were talking about previously, and I remembered the themes of Astro Boy 2003, but it actually used to hurt a little bit when people got so upset at me for trying to be neutral and trying to speak calmly wherever possible, even when everyone else was angry. Because they used to call me a robot and say things like I was unfeeling, which is pretty stupid and blatantly fucking untrue. Of course I feel things, dipshit. Everyone does. I mean, you know, caring is an emotion, and if I didn't care, I wouldn't be trying so hard to be reasonable. If I cared less, I would just let go, you know? But I think after a while, being called a robot or being called unfeeling stopped bothering me because I realized nobody worth talking to would do that to me. Like, nobody who is actually a valuable person in my life would do that. Like, they could jokingly say I sound like a robot because my voice is kind of, you know, deep and monotone in some situations. That's perfectly fine. That's just humor. That's fine. I mean, the way I carry myself. Being called a robot for that. Anyone who does that, obviously not worth my time or emotional energy. Unless I'm just saying stuff to piss them off. Because there's value in it and entertainment in that. You know, if someone acts like an ass to you first, I think that's full consent to be an ass in return. It helps to make sure that they were being an ass first, though. That's a very important step. Make sure before you be an ass in return that the person was actually being an ass and they weren't just communicating in a way you're unfamiliar with, because a lot of the times that is the case, as was mentioned previously, like near the beginning of the video. Sometimes people who seem to be assholes are just trying to communicate differently than you, and you should try to understand their perspective. But if someone's cursing at you or personally attacking you or calling you a cunt or whatever, yeah, just fuck that. Screw with them however you can. There's no reason to try and be diplomatic anymore unless you're being diplomatic specifically to mess with them. You know, you are really not responsible for their emotions. You're responsible for yours. If you act like an ass first, you're responsible for that, you know? That's on you. If they act like an ass first, that's on them. But what happens after that, that's fair game. I would personally recommend that if they're, you know, hurting you emotionally, to stop engaging with them, if they're the ones that were an ass first. But if they're not hurting you, and you just want to fuck with them, I think that's alright. I think that's a-okay. Shitting on someone is, you know, consent to be shat on in return. This is one of the very few situations where this applies, and you have to be absolutely sure about it too, because otherwise you accidentally end up being the first one to be an ass. You have to be absolutely sure the other person was an ass first. Otherwise you can't be an ass back. I mean, you can, but I think at that point you're just kind of being bad. And ideally you don't want to do that. Ideally you don't want to be the first person to be an asshole. That's not a good way to be. This music, by the way, is from the video game Ants Extreme Racing, available on the PS2 and PC. I thought that was kind of weird. I thought this weird, deep meditation vocalizing music probably would have been in a game that made more sense, but no, it's in Ants on the PS2. If you want to find the music, I'm sure you could. If you want to find the game, I'm sure you could. It's a weird game. I watched someone speedrun it recently, and it didn't look very enjoyable. But it looked like it had ideas behind it. There were a couple of cute references to the way ants work. You know, there was more than zero amount of effort put in. Especially on the composer's end, it seems. I have a thing for vocalizing in songs. That's why I like the Evergrace soundtrack so much, which a lot of people consider to be really hard to listen to. Maybe I should put in the Evergrace soundtrack next time, because I love the Evergrace soundtrack. Are we done? I think we finally finished the Pistol Bull... Yeah, we finished the Pistol Bullseye course. Okay, Astro Boy next time. See ya.